welcome to the Friday show.
Hello.
I'm
Hello.
Elizabeth, kind of owner here of the studio. I'm
Kind of the owner.
kind of, I am.
She is the owner.
But I also love YouTube and some other online things, and so do these guys with me here.
Yep, Ben Hedgepath, general manager, her husband. She's the boss. I'm your Twitter snarky Reddit guy.
And Jay Hedgepath, resident social media and meme expert, holder of a PhD in internet anthropology.
Yeah, okay.
Please note he got that in middle school. Online. Let's just
Online
read
degree.
through exactly what that is for full transparency. And yes, we are all theory related, so that is not just a weird coincidence with that last name that we ended up here. But there's been a lot this week that went on legally.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. So I don't normally like to do legal heavy episodes because they're not necessarily like the most exciting.
They're
but
informational.
These things are like big news. Like I was kind of surprised by it, and it's a lot of the platforms moving in the right direction.
Right.
Sometimes misguided, but moving in the right direction. So you'll get to hear some misguided things. I think we're gonna jump right in here with TikTok today,
Yes.
and for a change, I'm gonna talk about TikTok.
What?
I know,
You
kind
have
of
a TikTok
crazy.
channel.
I know, but TikTok has been like on this meteoric rise this year.
Yeah.
If you look at it, everybody's talking about all the users and how it's changing media. Basically, if you want to boil it down, it's the resurgence of Vine.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's filling a hole that had already been created. So it's not like it's a new idea. It's just a spot where content hasn't been.
Right.
But the business TikTok has some interesting ties that make this a little bit interesting. And that comes down to the fact that, number one, it's owned by a Chinese company.
Right.
And so that raises a little questions there. So we've talked about that in the back. Are they spying on you? All of that. So let's also get into, in China, there's also a little bit more concern with what content is posted.
Right.
And so TikTok has come under fire because it was suppressing content and was actually part of its plan. It wasn't like, oh, it just accidentally, our algorithm was misconfigured or something to where it found these wrongly. It was actually part of their policies.
Their structures, their plans.
So that they would be like, oh, yes, we don't want this content. We want other things. And so they were limiting the viewership of LGBTQ content, of people they deemed overweight, people that had disabilities, like physical, like noticeable disabilities, in order for what they said for their in-house policy was to limit cyberbullying. Which on the surface sounds like, oh, okay, yeah, we don't want people to get harassed online. But if you're choosing to be online, then
You're putting yourself out there.
you are putting yourself out there and you're understanding this is what could happen. You can set privacy filters
Right.
so that you can limit where your content goes. So
Locked accounts and all that.
And even on TikTok, you can limit down to the video if people can share, duet, react,
Comment,
all-
anything.
save. You have control over all of that on TikTok.
yeah, and so rather than the company deciding this, I think it's better left in the hands of the user.
Right.
So a little questionable there. Now, they are also limiting content based on some Chinese things.
Right.
So the Hong Kong protests,
Right. You're not going to find those.
that's getting suppressed, as well as things talking about the Uyghur Muslims.
Yeah.
And I'll have some links below so you can find out a little bit more if you haven't heard of the Uyghurs and stuff like that, so you can understand. There have been a couple of deep dives both through Vox and through Rogue Rocket that have looked into what that group is in China.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting to see this. Now, also, TikTok, some of the representatives were supposed to meet with some congressional leaders
Right.
to be kind of going through what, number one, the Chinese involvement is, the suppression of content versus free speech, that type of stuff. They've canceled the meetings and postponed them.
Yeah.
So adds a little bit to all of that story here. So I'm anxious to see, because as of right now, they're just putting off the meetings until the beginning of next year. So won't really know anything else on that until then. So I'm anxious to kind of see what that's going to look like moving forward.
If it moves forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or if they're just hoping that people will forget by pushing it off. So.
Yeah.
Well, our culture forgets quickly, so that's for sure.
So that's all of that. That's like 3 stories in one right there,
Yeah.
kind of all piled in.
Next up, we have Pandora and their new ad structure. So Pandora is highlighting some new ad-supported services that came with one of their more recent updates, with both forced and voluntary viewership of new 15-second video ads to both expand their advertiser base, but also to allow consumers the ability to access premium content and features as a non-premium user.
Right.
I love this idea.
Oh, yeah.
You
I
get to
will,
watch ads and
especially because right now with where it's sitting, because it is so few ads to get it, it's like, oh, one 15-second ad for this, I'll take it.
Oh yeah, it's the same thing as Spotify's doing, but Spotify's 30 seconds, so it's even shorter.
Oh.
Yeah.
absolutely. So admittedly, we've been heavy Pandora users for a long time, but we've never paid for Pandora. We've always done the freebie side, and so I have no issue with running the 15-second ads so that we can go beyond the normal number of I don't want this song on the channels in an hour.
And which, as someone, just a little quick plug, I've tried almost every streaming service's premium side, and Pandora was the one I personally enjoyed the most.
Okay.
And so just being able to access those features without having to pay the $12.99 a month is nice.
Yeah.
And then also Instagram, back in the news again, having published a guide for parents and teens using the app, including interactive quizzes to help both parents and teens check their own habits and mindset towards the app and direct them towards resources if they're starting to get into an obsessive side or if they're starting to put too much of their own self-worth into how they're using the app. They have links to resources for that, guides for how parents, how setting examples through their own habits, that sort of stuff, how they can meet their kids at a point and then do off-phone activities as well. But then also something that I found really interesting is the possible addition of a upload filter that will detect if an image has been altered. And by altered, I don't mean you smacked a filter on it or adjusted contrast. I mean like Photoshop style, like liquefine, move.
Right.
And so hopefully that'll help cut down on more artificial images on the platform.
Right.
Instead of better standard for beauty and stuff.
And we were watching a pretty deep dive, multi-episode thing
with
from
Nerd
Nerd City on just that, and we don't have time to get into it this morning, but there's a lot that goes into that culture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what that puts forward.
Yeah. So on the other side of this here for Facebook now, it's cool seeing social media companies trying to take proactive steps to make sure that things are on the up and up. Like with Instagram saying, hey, we want people to be themselves. Facebook, they're putting some lawsuits out there right now to cover themselves and to cover users because there have been some malicious things happening on their platform, and so they're trying to curb that. The name of the company that they're going up against is called I Like Ad Media International Company Limited.
Wow.
Sounds legit. I had to pull that up because I can't remember. It's a whole long thing.
Do you have a picture of their official letterhead? Just
It takes up half
trails
the
around
page.
side.
Yeah.
But anyway, so this company and others have been using things, not just clickbait, but celeb bait. So they're making it look like a celebrity has actually endorsed whatever the product or service is. They obviously then haven't. And so Facebook is taking steps to help put the kibosh on those things to make sure that sort of stuff isn't happening. And there's also some practicing known as cloaking, where people deliberately disguise the landing page. So they show Facebook one thing basically, and then when they actually start running the ads, it's something else. And so there's a redirect that happens in the midway. And so there's been the celeb bait, the cloaking, and there's just been a lot of shady stuff going on from really the global community.
Yeah.
And so Facebook is working through legal means to try and shut those known offenders down, which, I mean, we appreciate that because I know I'm not a huge Facebook user. I don't think any of us are here at the table. But partly it's because of all the misinformation that rolls through on there. So this is just one more step that Facebook is taking to help curb misinformation.
Yeah, I found it interesting in that article how the monetary damages for Facebook are like minimal that they're seeking.
Tiny.
No,
It's more
no.
the cease and desist that they're wanting out
right.
of this.
Well, and Facebook at the moment has somewhere in the neighborhood of $56 billion just in cash
Sitting around.
sitting around.
They don't need the money.
Yeah.
So the article wraps up saying, look, scammers are always going to find a new way to cheat, but it's up to the platform as well as the users to help raise a flag when those things pop up.
Well, they also had against the Chinese company for creating fake accounts.
Right.
Which was really big too, because the fake accounts were being used to spread disinformation.
Right.
And so it wasn't even so much that there was the malware side of it. The other, these are two separate lawsuits that they have going right now, not just one. And it was like really crazy seeing all of it coming together with this. And I'm curious to see how many more are going to come out, how many we're going to actually hear about. Because, you know, once you reach a certain number, the news media gets bored of it.
Yeah. We'll drop a link in the description here as well. There is a Twitter account that exists just for flagging bots. And so with the impeachment stuff going on, there's more out-of-country stuff rolling around as well. So
that pretty much wraps it up for today.
Yeah.
What are you watching right now, Jay?
So Philip DeFranco put out a video recently with his series where he's talking with other creators, and he did a video with Carson King, known on YouTube and most platforms as Call Me Carson, and they had a really interesting discussion about like the rise of now the third wave of YouTubers and how since they've grown their platforms so organically and through community, how then so much of their life is invested in that, they don't really have a life outside of their content.
Right. Yeah.
And so he was talking about, one of my favorite lines is when Carson says that, I like to go home and then after a long night of gaming at 5 a.m. I curl up in bed and watch some anime because that's when I'm emotionally vulnerable.
Yeah.
Just because he knows that's his time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and that's a little bit of an echo of the first-gen YouTubers. You got your iJustines, in your case, United States people who are daily vlogging.
Yeah.
That became life.
Yeah.
So, interesting.
I'm going to be curious to see where that intersects with burnout. Because if it is so encompassing, that typically happens.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be interested to see how that's combated with this. And it's going to need to be addressed. It will at some point. But just curious as it goes forward. Also really curious to see what Gen 3 YouTubers, their content looks like.
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm happy to be getting out of the Jake Paul era of content. You know, that style. So
It's a lot more group interaction, which I think is both healthier for the creators, but also better for the community to see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm curious as that moves forward, we're going to get to see that unravel and everything else. So currently, my watch habits have been really boring. But I will let you know that A&E launched their channel, and they're putting all their old content up, which for me is like, Ben hates one of my guilty pleasures.
I don't like most of your guilty pleasures.
for watching, and that is hoarder shows. I absolutely adore hoarder shows, and they've got like all the episodes legitimately uploaded. So it's been one of my.
I watch Star Trek when you're not around. You can watch that when I'm not around.
So if you want to go check that out, like the Dog the Bounty Hunter, like there's a whole lot of them that they have put up just of their older content. So if you want to go check that out, I have it linked to their channel below.
Yep.
Ben, what are you watching?
So this morning, early while I was getting ready, Craig Benzine, also known as Wheezy Waiter, he and his wife China, they do things for a month to try it out, and then they tell you how it goes. And so I watched one this morning that was one of the recent efforts where it was trying to have zero waste for a month.
Wow.
Yeah, and when you have a child still in diapers, that's super tricky. So they walked through all of that and kind of went through the pros and the cons and what was easy to do and what wasn't a sustainable practice, and even what they had to do to help encourage some of the local retailers to help make some options that they said were available actually available. So really interesting as well, so we'll put the link for that in the description too.
So that's it for today. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I'm going to do that standard thing where I say like, share, and subscribe, click the bell.
Smash that
bell.
bell.
That's done. It's off the table. So now that you'll feel like this video is complete.
Yes.
So we will see you next week. Next week will be the last episode for the year that's standard like this. The following 2 weeks, we're actually going to have a video a day, but it's going to be platform specific for each video. So
where they're heading in 2020.
Yeah, what to look forward to on those. Rather than the year in review for them, we're like looking forward.
Let's look ahead. Yep.
So anyway, that is it for today. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.